Thank you for watching this webinar on the Board Financial Consolidation tool. This is release 3 of the product, so you may have seen previous releases. In this release here, this is the look and feel that is consistent throughout the product. Its product's broken down into 4 major areas. So administration, local reporting, process manager, and troubleshooting. We're going to start by looking at the admin area, where we have some different setup pieces that we can do that can be used to really set up the basis for our financial consolidation. And then the local reporting, process management, troubleshooting will give us further insight and tools to work through that. Within administration, we've got application setup, account settings, organization setup, movements, and some custom dimension setups that can be done to increase the granularity or customize certain editors. So let's start with the application setup. If we look at first some of the general settings that are available, this helps us identify what kind of currency translation methods do we want to use here. By default, we're using the year-to-date average with exchange rates. Also, by default, we have broadcasting set up so that if in a workflow data is ready to be actioned, someone gets a notification so that they can come into the tool and work on their piece of the workflow to do that. As we go back to the administration tab, we can also set up our scenario settings. So the scenario settings rely on what data do we want to work on. So maybe I could create, here we've got actuals, maybe I want to create a budget or forecast, or for other pieces I can create whichever ones I want. I can also edit the properties of those. So here for our actual scenario, I can determine whether or not a particular year and period combination is available, whether it's open, whether it's closed, and whether it's archived. So having control of that here gives you added flexibility, control, and ability to make performance changes down the road. We can also look at some calendar settings. So this is where we're just going to be setting pieces about the fiscal year. When does it start? When does it end with respect to calendar months? We can also track prior year, current year, and other years that may be of reference. So this is helpful for reporting in different pieces. And just needs to be set once here. We also have Audit Trail. So Audit Trail provides the ability to track when certain activities happen throughout the system. You can extend this as well to have other events that you want to track, and you can activate or deactivate tracking of these different items, and that gives you a little bit more detail into who's doing what as your consolidation progresses. Now, having done most of the setup, we can start looking at the chart of accounts. So if we go back to our administration area, our account settings, the first thing we do is to set account attributes. So when I click on account attributes, this is going to show me my consolidated chart of accounts. And I can also identify whether this is a leaf element, whether input is allowed to it, whether there's movement, which should we track for movement. Is this intercompany with third party, or is this maybe intercompany only? And whether it should be excluded from intercompany reconciliation. So that's all done here as part of the setup, seeing all of our accounts down the rows and setting these properties on an account-by-account basis. Now, having set this the account attributes, we can go back to our main view here, and we start looking at the account translation rates. In this view, we can identify for a particular account how is the translations going to occur. Do we want translation at the closing rate, at the average rate, historical rate, or using no monetary rate? And we also have a visual indicator here along the right-hand side of this green and red bar. The red bar indicates that this is something that needs to be defined, and the green bar indicates everything is fine with that item. So as you can see, this one row here for account 160, we need to enter something for this row to be valid. We need to say what type of currency translation should be used for this particular account. So maybe if I just say that's going to be fine at the closing rate, I put a check mark there, I send that in, and here I see it's passing validation. It's all green now for that row. So as I continue down my list here, I can just set these for each different account and continue on my consolidation. So the next piece let's look at is the cash flow piece. Cash flow can be a bit complicated, but Word makes it a lot more clear. Here we can look at our cash flow rules section. And here we see on the left-hand side, this is our statement of cash flows. And on the right-hand side, we see a number of accounts related to, and the movements for these accounts related to individual pieces. So maybe if I want to look at my trade AR, by focusing on that individual element, I can see these are all of the items related to trade AR and how their balance or activity increases or decreases my increase in trade AR. If I wanted to add something to this, I can just click the little plus button beside the increase or decrease in trade AR. It prompts me for particular accounts. I can pick a particular account. It's going to also ask me what type of change is this going to be. Well, I want this to be, let's say this is opening balance. There's opening balance. So there we go. Now we can see that one, the opening balance is included in that calculation. For our purposes, that's probably incorrect, but just to illustrate the point that as you're working through your statement of cash flows, you can just add or subtract individual elements and the movements related to that particular element for items in your statement of cash flow. So if there's ever any question around how does a statement of cash flow item get calculated, you can pick any one of your items in this tool and you'll see exactly how those items are calculated. So it makes both configuring cash flow a lot more clear and also explaining it to possibly an auditor or someone new on the team more straightforward as well. So now we've configured our cash flow rules. If we go back to our main view here, we're now ready to work on the organization setup. So the first thing in the organization setup is the currency editor. And that's going to help us identify what currencies are we bringing as data being received in, and also what currencies are we consolidating into. So in this view here, we can accept data in all of these currencies, and then when we run our consolidation, we have consolidated data in these two currencies. And this is configurable. You can add different currencies here to fit whatever needs you have. Now that our currency is all set up, we can start talking about entities. So we have our legal entity editor, and the legal entity editor is going to show us all the entities that we have in the system. What currency are they set in? Are they an intercompany party? And different properties for these. Are movements available? And it also gives us the same kind of validation you'll see throughout the tool, where green on a particular row means everything passes validation. Red means something's still yet to be completed. So here, for a number of entities towards the bottom, that we haven't set whether they're available or not. So if I come in here and just say these are available, and just save that, now I'll see that these have passed validation. There's one more validation there. There's still something incorrect with this one. There could be something else I need to investigate, but I get the visual indicator that for the top one and the bottom one, those ones are ready to go. There's still some further action required for Pacific goods. And happen to know that, well, this combination isn't valid, so I need to get rid of these three marks here. And now when I save it, now I get my green validation, all the three new rows. The next major section to talk about is the movements. So if we go back to our main view, you'll see the movements section here. We start with our movements editor. This is where we can identify for each of the different types of movements what are the attributes and also the groups for these different items. So maybe for our opening balance, we know what type of, it's an opening balance. If there's any properties related to the translation. And we can look at the movement group to say, well, for opening balances, the opening balance, it applies to all of these groups of our accounts. So at this point, the consolidation is mostly set up. There's a few remaining pieces that we can configure, so we can configure those now. So let's go and talk about the consolidation scope and method. So to get there, we'll go back to our main screen. I want to go to my process manager. Open my process manager. and then I can go look to my consolidation area and method. Here's where we can define for our consolidation group for each of the entities that we're working with. Are there shares or control percentages to be entered? And also, what kind of consolidation method should be used? The default is global. There's also proportional, which would represent a true percentage ownership of a kind of joint venture. Could be an equity position where just maybe the dividend or kind of dispersion is paid out. And an exit would be some kind of a discontinuing of operations or sale of some kind. So you can control these different pieces here. And the next one is also setting our currency rates. So we can set our currency rates. Here we see for closing rates to and from each currency, we get the rate and the inverse of it. We can also set average rates. We can set historical rates and spot rates as well. And these are all specific to a scenario and a particular period. So at this point, we're all set. Where consolidation, the features have all been configured for us to do consolidations. Now, imagine we're actually doing a consolidation piece. The first step is really for folks at subsidiary entities to start submitting or entering their data. So first thing we need to do is we need to go into our local reporting piece. Here in our local reporting area, you'll see what someone who is submitting data, these are the areas that they're most interested in. So they're going to be entering data or entering details through the data collection section. They have some local reporting that they can do to validate that the data is coming across the way they expected, and some possible adjustments if necessary. Now, getting data to and from, here in this view, we're actually seeing this would be where we can pull data from our source system. There's a lot of connectors available for SAP and other source systems, Great Plains and what have you, to pull data very easily out of those source systems and bring here. This would be where you can validate the data coming across is indeed correct for whatever period you want. And then the next step here is this, in the bulk loader section, you can get an idea of how this data should be treated when consolidating up. So for an individual account, how is it treated? And here we again see the green lines identifying this is a correct valid mapping, everything's fine. The red lines here represent there's something needed to map this source data to our consolidated chart of accounts. So maybe patents as an example, we see it's got a red bar, so there's a mapping still required for this particular account. And this listing of accounts, this is from the source system. So this source system listing of accounts, this is the exercise of mapping those to our consolidated chart. So for patents here, let's use this as an example. We're going to drill into that one so that we can correctly map that to our consolidated chart. Maybe for that one, it's going to add to that account and subtract from that account. And by setting that mapping up and coming back to the same screen, we now see a green bar there identifying that has passed validation, and it's ready to go. So now at this point, we've loaded data in from our source system, wherever that may be. We've mapped data in the subsidiary chart of accounts, the consolidated chart of accounts. So the next step for us to do is let's look at some intercompany eliminations, see how that's worked out. So in our local reporting section, the first step is an intercompany reconciliation. And as we go into that, it's going to bring up a report that shows us the receivable payable combination and the payable receivable combination and any gaps that are in. We can also dial this in a bit to make it a little more easy to understand why there are gaps between the two. So maybe we go and we look at Acme Spa as one of our entities, and we see that here there's a gap of 1, and this helps us identify differences between our, in this case, receivable payables, and here payable intercompany receivable. If we find one that we want to investigate, we can actually get the detail from the balance sheet. So by clicking this on a particular row, it's going to bring up a very specific drill-through report to show us the relevant transactions for this out of balance. So here, seeing these transactions on our screen, it should give us an indication of if there's some action required, or maybe this is related to currency translation or a method difference. So now, assuming we've gone through and we've fixed all of our any intercompany issues we need to correct, or one of the ways we might correct some of this is entering some journal entries. So the adjustment editor is where we can do that. So if we went into the adjustment rows editor, this would be an area where we can enter adjustments. Here we have one I've already been working on. We can see that it's got our two different accounts. This is an intercompany with these, actually, if these are the entities involved, which is in this case the same entity. Maybe I want to add an adjustment row, so I can click the button to add an adjustment row, and I want it for this particular account. So I pick that. It's going to bring it up. Oh, probably that was the entity. Here I can pick my account. And a lot of other tools would just add the new account in, and you can create your journal entry and be off to the races. What's probably going to jump out at you is that there's validation right on the sheet here with respect to the intercompany and the movement of this particular account. So I have to choose what is the intercompany of this one. Well, it's going to be number one, just like the other ones. And what about movement? Well, it has to be short-term movement. This is the only one valid for this combination. So if I wanted to put in, say I'll make that 50, I'll adjust that to be negative 50. I'll save that change. Now I'm all in balance. Oh, pardon me, no, I'm not in balance. And there is, actually, let's just demonstrate that. So let's say I didn't catch that, and I have that saved, and saving it's fine, for what's in progress, and then maybe I want to come here to confirm it. And I get a validation, the adjustment can't be validated, debit and credit do not balance, as you'd expect. So, oops, I made a mistake. I can correct it. It's also telling me here that credit must be negative. So I have to put in my negative sign. So through the UI, it also validates that. I can't even exit that cell until that's been corrected. So fix that, hit confirm, done. And that one's all fine. So to this point, we've loaded our data, we've mapped it, we've checked our intercompany eliminations, we've entered any adjustments we may find necessary, and now if we go back to our for our local reporting view, we've completed the major areas here. But and now we're going to go back to the process manager section, because as a process manager, maybe as an administrator, you want to be able to have visibility into where people are within the workflow. So if we click on Process Manager, now within our Process Manager, we actually have our Audit Trail Manager on the right-hand side. So by clicking the Audit Trail Manager, we're going to get a feel for what tasks are in progress and where different tasks are within their different workflows. We have global tasks that would be probably done by administrators or analysts, and local tasks that would be done by specific, maybe controllers or business unit owners with their specific submissions. So as you're looking at the different tasks, maybe I want to come in here and just say that a particular task is complete. So I can just come in here and mark it as done. Process will run to mark it as done, and then it tracks with my name. Green passes the validation, and it's then marked as done. So one other thing we might want to do is start looking at some of our reports. So to that, we normally run our consolidation, run the consolidation execution. It takes a couple of minutes to run. Then we've got all our data available, so we could look at it in, say, an income statement. So in our group reporting library, we have a number of reports available. If we were to look at, say, an income statement, we can still break it down into the different pieces we want to see, different scenarios, different periods, and you'll see really the breakdown by different level or step in the consolidation right here. There's one adjustment to make. We're hiding a couple of things here, so I'm just going to make sure we're showing all of them. I'll show all of my layers. So now we see all of the layers that are played out in this particular consolidation, where the data started at, what the local currency input was, from a local GAAP perspective, total local currency, translation to group, parent currency, and different steps, intercompany elimination. And this is very configurable. So if you have additional steps or any other consolidation pieces to put in here, we can work with that. But for the most part, this should cover many, many cases. So by breaking it down into all the different steps, anyone that wants the detail on has that immediately accessible, and you can go back and report on previous periods as well. So it's very easily accessible for anyone that would need that level of detail. So all of these are standard reports available in the package. The statutory reporting is your standard balance sheet and P&L. So this would be the nice one you end up sending out as part of your financial statements. And also, given that this is all within board, if you wanted to use these or wherever in dashboards or other reporting pieces, they're immediately available. There's nothing that needs to get done to move the data around to make them available somewhere else. And with that, going back to our process manager, we've talked about the admin section, the local reporting area where folks would do their submissions and mappings, the process manager, which is this piece here that does a little bit of setup and then is responsible for running the consolidation and then seeing the group reporting. And also, we haven't talked about the troubleshooting piece. So I'll briefly look at that. So I'll click on troubleshooting. And in our troubleshooting section, there's different, it's an area for checking our settings. We can check some of the data input pieces, checking opening balances and profit allocation, check that conversions are happening at the different rates and different rates and methods, and also checking our intercompany eliminations. So thank you for watching this video. I hope it's been very useful. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. My name is Bob Gill, and I look forward to chatting with you.